On today's show, we project our lineups for Team Canada and we talk about Juraj Slafkovsky finally getting a shot at the first line. All coming up on today's show on Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi joined by Sebastian Hi, and on today's show, we'll first be breaking down the announcement of Team Canada's 30-man shortlist for the World Junior Championship, and we build our lineup based on who they have invited. We'll also talk about some of the players that they omitted, some players who didn't make the cut that were pretty surprising. In our second segment, we'll talk a bit more about Team Austria at the Division II World Junior Championships. They already have two full-on rejections. David Reinbacher and Marco Kasper will not be going to Team Austria. We'll talk about why that is and talk about kind of what that means for their development and whether that's a good idea or not. In our third segment, finally, Juraj Slafkovsky gets a shot at the first line, a full game shot at the first line with Nick Suzuki and Caufield over in Montreal. We'll talk about what his game was like. Personally, I think that was the best game I've ever seen Slafkovsky play, but we'll get into that further on later on. Before I get into that, just to make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. All right, so let's get things started here with Team Canada's 30-man roster. Some pretty interesting omissions. I think we can start there. What do you think about some of the guys that were omitted? Just rifle through some of these names here and how they surprised you in terms of who was there and who wasn't.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've got some high-end draft picks from very recent drafts that were just not brought. Like Callum Ritchie comes to mind as one that I was very much expecting to be there. He has excelled internationally with Canada. Same with Colby Barlow, another first-round pick, also plays a physical, intense game. Very typical Hockey Canada player to bring to a tournament. So I was a bit surprised that those two guys weren't brought. And then you've also got a player who's 1 year older than them, and Owen Pickering, who was left out, another first-round pick, pretty high. He's also quite big. There's a lot of overlap here of big, high draft picks being a bit surprising to not have been brought, considering Canada's track record with World Junior rosters. But yeah, and Andrew Crystal is one who, based on talent, you'd hope he would have been able to crack the team, but isn't exactly a Hockey Canada style player. Hopefully next year, but he won't be there this year just yet. But there's also two draft eligibles that we were hoping maybe and half expecting to at least get an invite to camp, and who didn't. Yeah. So talk us through those two.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Caden Lindstrom, first and foremost, he's been outstanding this year, and he's definitely put himself in the top 5 conversation for the 2024 NHL draft. And this is a big player who plays really with a surprising amount of finesse. I mean, he's able to connect plays really well. His offensive skill set and also his offensive brain are just really, really strong. It was a bit more cloudy at the start of the year in terms of what his upside is, but as the year's gone on, I mean, it's been very clear that he's got the skill set and the upside to play a variety of roles, but also has the upside to push into a top 6, maybe even top line conversation. So I was fairly surprised to see him omitted from this roster, especially given the track record of Team Canada in terms of the players that they pick for these tournaments. I felt like Lindstrom would be right in his alley in terms of the play style they'd want him to play, especially in a bottom 6 role, but he's not there. And the other name is Sam Dickinson, probably the best Canadian defenseman in the 2024 draft, according to consensus. There are other names in there, but for me, Dickinson he's always been able to prove himself against older players and outplay older defensemen in the lineup he plays in. So I was fairly surprised to see him omitted from this roster because he is another player who plays a very Team Canada style, and also is a left-handed defenseman, which is where I'd say Canada's the weakest. They probably have 4 really good right-handed defensemen in this roster. I thought that adding Dickinson in there just as a change-up would have been good. But yeah, I mean, we can get into these lineups right away. We've built a lineup based on the players that were invited. I'll start off with mine. What I project as the first line will be Easton Cowan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Connor Geekie of the Arizona Coyotes, and Matt Savoy of the Buffalo Sabres. Geekie and Savoy play together in Wenatchee, had even dating back to their draft year in Winnipeg, with the Winnipeg Ice in the WHL. This is a combo that's worked really well in that team, and they complement each other really well. I think that Connor Geekie has improved his game drastically and has become kind of a top end WHLer. So I think that him being on the first line is kind of a no brainer. And Easton Cowan complements those two really well with high end intensity, really good puck habits. So that could be a line that works really well together. And Cowan was one of the most impressive Toronto Maple Leafs prospects at their training camp. So that's my first line. Carson Raykoff, I'd say, would make the top six, along with Macklin Celebrini, of course, and Jagger Furcus. Raykoff's been really, really, really good to start off the year in the OHL. Jagger Furcus, same thing. I'd say Furcus will be kind of the more kind of goal scoring, player on that line, but Celebrini and Raykoff are no slouches offensively in terms of goal scoring ability either. So that could be like your big goal scoring line. But both Furcus, Raykoff, well, all three of Raykoff, Furcus, and Celebrini can make plays as well, can connect plays through really accurate passes and your really good vision. Celebrini could be kind of the more defensive element on that on that line, but I'd be fairly interested in seeing how that works out. Then my third line would be a lot more defensive. So we've got Fraser Minton of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Nate Danielson of Detroit, and Matthew Wood of the Nashville Predators. These are three players that are big, that can play defensively, but also have a decent amount of offensive skill. And then you end things off with your fourth line of Braden Yeager, Owen Beck, and Jordan Dumais. A bit of a mixed bag, two really good offensive players with an excellent defensive player, a really balanced fourth line. Then I'd bring Denver Barkey as our 13th forward. That kind of be how it plays out for me. But yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, like I mean, I have almost the exact same selection of players. I think I have the exact same 13 names as you do,
Yeah.
picked from this preliminary forward roster. But I
Yeah.
shuffled them around a little bit. I think I made some slightly more bullish takes in terms of swinging hard on upside, because
Yeah.
I treat this less as a projection and more of what maybe I would be doing, at least for the opening game of the tournament.
For sure.
So I went with Easton Cowan, Macklin Celebrini, and Jagger Furcus on the top line, going all out
Mhm.
offense. And I think those are three players that complement each other well. There are very specific roles reserved for each of them, where Celebrini is the dynamic play driver. You have Easton Cowan to do all the dirty work and get some goals from in tight, and Jagger Furcus to bring in that high level skill and elite level goal scoring ability. And then on the second line, I also kept Connor Geekie and Matt Savoy together. That established chemistry, as you mentioned, is going to be quite valuable for Canada, which is a team that rarely has much chemistry between players going into tournaments, especially compared to American teams, for instance. And I paired them with Fraser Minton, another Maple Leafs prospect who almost cracked the roster this season and has looked very, very good with each passing week since his draft. So I think that he has earned a top six role. And then third line, I also went with Matt Wood and Nate Danielson. You have two highly intelligent players that can play on both sides of the puck quite well. And I'm going to pair them with Carson Raykoff, who leads the OHL in goals. You're spreading out the offense a little bit throughout the lineup. You're never giving your opponents really a break from high-end offense. And then the fourth line is very similar to yours, but instead of having Jordan Dumais on the fourth line, I'm swapping in Denver Barkey and bringing Dumais as the 13th forward instead.
Absolutely. It's going to be a very interesting lineup. Some of the guys that we don't think will make the cut are a couple of 2023 undrafted players, including Marcus Vidicek, who could be an outsider. I think he's got a shot at the roster, but I'm just not sure with the amount of talent that's here. On defense, though, I think our first pair is a no-brainer. It's going to be Denton Matejchuk and
Yeah,
Tristan Duneau. I don't think there's any
it's
doubt
clear.
there. One NHLer with one of the best WHL defensemen. Really easy there.
The best WHL defenseman at
Yeah,
this point.
then it gets a bit complicated. Yeah, absolutely. Then it gets a bit complicated because my second pair is your third pair. My second
Yes,
pair is Maverick Lamoureux and Ty Nelson. Lamoureux, big, big, big defenseman. Ty Nelson has that offensive element that I think that Lamoureux doesn't have yet. So that combination of skills will be very interesting. And then, what your second pair is Tanner Molendijk and Noah Warren. I
yeah,
have as my third pair Michael Buchinger. and Noah Warren. What makes you put Molendijk over Buchinger, and what makes you put that combo as your second pair rather than your third pair?
Yeah, I've been a massive fan of Noah Warren going back to his draft year. I got to
Yeah.
watch him live for his first ever QMJHL game from the press box. I've been following his career very closely for quite a while now, and I really love his combination of physicality and composure and overall control of the game. He's really, really a smart defender, and he uses his physicality really, really intelligently, which is one of the more important facets of a physical defenseman's game in my eyes. And he fits the bill there. And pairing him with a player like Tanner Molendijk, who is probably the best skater in this defensive core in terms of mobility, it really offers a lot of space that pairing can kind of exploit and create for each other, two high-end skaters. And I think their styles complement each other quite well. And Molendijk has really taken significant steps in the last 6 months in his game. So I would be in favor of rewarding that and then keeping a pretty solid third pair of Lamoureux and Nelson to kind of get some bigger minutes. And Nelson is a real goal-scoring threat. Lamoureux is he has like probably the longest reach of any defenseman that's going to be at this tournament. He's going to be a bit of an octopus and just clean up whenever things get dirty in the back end. And I'll bring Michael Buchinger as my seventh defenseman because he's versatile. I've seen him play on both sides quite well, and he's old for this group of players. And I think he's a good player to also bring along.
Yeah, absolutely. One very interesting omission on goalie before we go to break. Carson Bjarnason is not going to be at this tournament. It's going to be Dom Divicentius and Scott Ratzlaff, two drafted goaltenders that have been playing decently well. And then they obviously went for two undrafted QMJHL goaltenders to finish off their four-man goalie roster, as they always do. I think Matsias Rousseau is going to make the cut. He's got the better numbers of the two, and overall has been really, really good in the QMJHL. So, that wraps things up for our Team Canada breakdown. Now we'll get into our second segment where we talk a bit about Team Austria and what their roster is going to look like with these very big omissions from their roster. We'll get into that after these messages from our sponsors over at eBay Motors.
Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits and LED headlights and far more, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, which is only available to U.S. customers. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment, we'll talk a bit about what's going on with Team Austria because it's not looking good. So far, they've got two rejections to their invites that are basically their two biggest players. David Reinbacher has chosen to stay in Switzerland to continue his development instead of going to play with Team Austria at the Division II World Junior Championship. And then Marco Kasper as well, for the second year in a row, has refused to go and play with Team Austria. This is not looking good for them because on top of this, Vincenz Rohrer, who's probably their only other prospect of note, has injured his hand and will not be going either. So they're missing their three biggest players. And obviously, if we're talking about a Team Austria that's still in the Division One World Junior Championship, who's playing, in Sweden with the rest of this big roster of players, we would probably see, at the very least, David Reinbacher, if not also Marco Kasper, right? I mean, it's just these are two very, very good players, and I don't think that Team Austria really, can do much for them if they're going to play in Division 2. They're not really playing against the best competition. They're not really, challenging themselves in terms of, the strength of this tournament. So, do you see a point of them going, or do you kind of see this as just a no-brainer for them to just stay in their development programs and just continue to develop their games?
I mean, it's a personal choice, right? Like, I think in terms of development, staying with their professional programs is probably a wise choice. At
Yeah.
the same time, it would be very, very understandable if they'd want to play anyways to drag Austria back to the top tier of the World Junior competition. So
Yeah.
I could have seen it go either way. I think I was a little bit surprised when Reinbacher decided not to, just because, again, I think that playing at the World Junior Championships, or at the very least promoting your country back to the top level, is something a lot of players could be quite passionate about and really incentivized to do.
Hmm.
But clearly it wasn't the right fit for either Kasper or Reinbacher to do this year. And losing Rohrer is just extra unfortunate because he's been playing bottom 6 minutes in pro hockey and he likely would have gone to the tournament. So
Yeah.
that just stings extra to lose all three of your top players that were all top end draft picks. I mean, 2 top 10 picks and 1 third-round pick.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm sure it stings for fans of Austrian national team hockey.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if you're a fan of the country, these are some of your biggest products. You're looking to like get a good look at them and see what they're doing. But I mean, at the same time, I fully understand the argument. I mean, Reinbacher's playing in the top Swiss division right now. He's playing against men. He's playing, he's trying to get back on track in terms of his development route. Because I mean, if you look at his production last year versus this year, it's night and day.
Yeah.
It's not looking too good for him right now. And yes, he was injured. Yes, he had some kind of bumps in the road. But at the same time, like you fully understand a player like this wanting to stick with the highest level he can play at and continue to develop his game in that league. So as much as I feel bad for for Austrian hockey fans who want to see their players playing in their country's uniform. I respect David Reinbacher for being able to put his foot down, talking to his agent and figuring out the best route for him because I think this is the best route for him. Is the higher the level at which he's playing, the better it is. And I don't think playing, against the likes of Lithuania or whoever else is in Division. I mean, it's just there isn't the highest level of competition at that tournament in Division 2. Um, it would have been interesting to see Reinbacher facing off against Canada and USA because I think that would be much better for kind of how we project his development, and it would be great to see him play against the best players of his age group, but these aren't the best players in his age group he's going to be playing against. So I mean, for me, it's very respectable that Reinbacher decided to stay with Cloten in Switzerland. But for Marco Kasper, it's a bit of the same. I mean, this is a player who last year was already too good for this tournament, and that was in the World Juniors. This year, I mean, he has even less of an incentive. He's one of Detroit's best prospects, playing really good in the pros right now. He's a player who can really man the puck extremely well, but I think his best asset is forechecking. And if he goes to Division 2 World Juniors, he's not going to be doing a lot of forechecking. It's going to be a lot of open ice goal scoring. Whereas right now in the AHL, he's working on his best element and making it a bona fide strength so that he hits the NHL running in terms of what he's able to do. I think by the time he hits his prime, we're talking about one of the best forecheckers in the NHL. So not much
Yeah.
of a point in seeing him play in the NHL in Division 2 World Juniors right now, right?
Yeah, he was already so clearly the best player on that team Austria, what, 2
Yeah,
years ago already now?
yeah,
And that would have just really continued along the same lines since
yeah,
then. And I think that of all the players to have playing Division 2 World Juniors, Marco Kasper has just about the least to learn from that experience.
exactly.
He would be as you said, he'd be a dominant forechecker. He would be suffocating and probably a little bit frustrated with the lack of talent around him in that team to
Yeah,
kind of support him in exploiting the turnovers that his forechecking continuously would create. So yeah,
exactly.
it definitely makes sense as a decision. But I think I personally would have loved to have seen those two players play Division 1 World Junior Championships. Would have been very
Yeah,
fun. But
yeah,
in terms of development strategies and just a personal decision from them, it makes a ton of sense to not go.
100%. But that wraps things up for a second segment about Team Austria's struggling roster. Now we'll get into Juraj Slafkovsky playing on the first line in Montreal and doing a fantastic job. We'll get into that right after these messages from our sponsors over at Jace Medical. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of pretty much the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary, and I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if one of your loved ones gets sick while a supply chain issue kept them from the life saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, Jace Medical is a great source of reliable medication that can get to your door very quickly, very easily. We'll start with the Jace case, which I think is a really interesting product of theirs, especially if you travel a lot. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial and illnesses, anything ranging from UTIs to respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, and a lot more. This stuff could happen to any of us, and Jace Medical has a great product in the Jace case that helps you stay ready. So visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular costs. Just fill out a form, sometimes hop on a call, and you've got your Jace case on the way. It's never been more important to be prepared for any illnesses than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. All right, so closing things off, Juraj Slafkovsky gets a shot at the first line in Montreal, the moment we've all been waiting for. And for me, best game he's played all year. It was ridiculous to watch him on that forecheck. I think he identified his niche so quickly on that line. Nick Suzuki's a play driver, a pure play driver. He's going to get pucks in transition, play them offensively, and then cycle the heck out of the puck with efficiency, with accuracy. He's going to make small, intricate playmaking plays that are really going to connect plays well. Cole Caufield, obviously, the finisher. I mean, he puts everything in the back of the net. So Slafkovsky's role on that line, he figured it out very quickly, and he excelled at what he was doing. Especially in the first period, there were easily 4 or 5 different sequences where he single-handedly retrieved the puck and extended an offensive zone possession. He was hemming the opponents in their zone. He was forcing rebounds to come back on his team's stick. And that is essential on a line like that. You need a player who's able to retrieve Cole Caufield's top corner attempts that go wide and then hit the boards. You need a player who's able to get those back and then cycle them back up so Cole Caufield can try that shot again. And yeah, I mean, do you agree? Was this Slafkovsky's best game of the season? Even though he didn't get a point. I mean, he didn't get a point in this game, but yeah, what do you think?
It didn't matter. Yeah, I think Slafkovsky's been really impressively improving on a game-to-game basis. And I mean that quite literally. He looks better with every single passing game, and he has for the last month at this point. Mm-hmm. And this promotion has been huge for him. And I think that as you said, he found his niche so quickly, and he looks comfortable in his role. And even when he was playing some really good hockey over the last couple of weeks, the role consistency was still a bit of a question mark in my eyes. He was still trying to maybe do a little bit of everything, trying to be the playmaker, a finisher, do this, do that. And it just was a little bit too abstract as a role. But on that top line, it is quite cut and dry. He is a high-end player on retrievals. He was winning board battles with incredible consistency. He won a long board battle against Matty Beniers, and it was a 2-on-1 board battle for the second half of it too. Yep. It was quite impressive play, and he looked confident with the puck on his stick. He had his head up. He was pre-scanning. A lot of these habits that he was struggling with are becoming comfortable now, which is not something that I was really expecting to happen this quickly in the off season. So his progression has been very impressive, and he's a very natural fit on that line. I think I still have my fair share of questions about combining Suzuki and Caufield at 5-on-5, just because I think that Suzuki's biggest strengths are on the defensive side of the puck at even strength, and Caufield's are not at on defense. But I mean,
he's gone good defensively. There are some plays where I see Cole Caufield get back, be the first man back to cover for a defenseman. He'll get sticks on pucks. He's gotten so much better. Yeah.
He's getting significantly less bad defensively, but you're not going to put him out on the ice when you're up a goal with 20 seconds to go in a game. I still wouldn't, right? I think that Suzuki is at his best when he can play more methodical possession-based style of hockey, and Cole Caufield, I think, is better with a player like Kirby Dach, for instance. That said, putting Slafkovsky on that line made those two work better together in my eyes.
Yeah.
Like I haven't seen Suzuki and Caufield play as well together as they did in that game against Seattle since like well into last season. So it's been a while, and Slafkovsky was a nice fit on that line, and I'd love to see him continue to get those minutes. I was very happy to see that he got it onto that first power play. I think he's deserved that chance. I like the idea of playing him on the half wall. And then you have the trio of Suzuki, Caufield, and Monahan down low on the left side, with Matheson being able to connect everyone together. I like the layout of that power play quite a bit, and I think Slafkovsky plays an important role as being a dual threat shooter and passer. The shooting still has to become a bit more consistent at this stage. Like the decision making of when he releases the puck and when he doesn't is still a work in progress. But the release is really quite powerful when he gets it off well. And I've been very impressed with Slafkovsky, and that game on the first line was the peak of what we've seen so far of him at the NHL level.
For sure. If you're a Habs fan and you watched that game, I'm sure you remember the specific moment where he cut between two defensemen for a potential breakaway and drew a tripping penalty. That was pretty much like the standout clip from that game, and there's a reason for that. It's beyond just the fact that like he drew a penalty. It's just the fact that he identified that he had that lane open, and all he had to do was use a couple crossovers across Adam Larson and then push the puck past him and then accelerate into that space. And that's something we haven't seen often from Slafkovsky. And beyond that, this particular angle change before putting the puck past Adam Larson really changed everything, because we probably would have seen Juraj Slafkovsky attempt that last year, where he would just go in a straight line and try to blow past him, and it wouldn't have worked. But the fact that he used crossovers to draw Adam Larson in towards his right side and then push the puck past his stick and try to accelerate in that space, that is such an important tool that Slafkovsky can build off of. And yeah, there's a reason why that stood out to you, is because we don't see Slafkovsky do that often. And it was a really good, really projectable, really NHL ready play. And he did that while playing first line minutes for one of the only times in his career so far in the NHL, with the two best players on the team, and again made them look really, really good. Martin St. Louis was talking after the game about how, even though he didn't get a point, and how, if you look at the score sheet, it doesn't look like Slafkovsky did something really good in this game. But he said there were a lot, and he accentuated a lot of good actions from Slafkovsky in this game, and that's refreshing to hear. Beyond just that one kind of penalty drawn, there were so many small details along the boards. There was one play where he had his back to the play. He had two players on his back, and then he's battling for the puck, and then I see him look up, and I'm like, why aren't you trying to secure the puck? Then I realized he has a skate on the puck and was looking for a pass option, and then zipped a perfect pass on the tape of Nick Suzuki off his foot. Like, that was a soccer play.
That was a beautiful play. Yeah.
It was gorgeous. And yeah, there are small elements like that where you see a player who's getting more comfortable with his skill set, who's understanding that he needs to scan, understanding that he needs to see what's going on around him. But it's one thing to scan, it's another thing to understand what you're scanning. And Slafkovsky understands what he's scanning. He's not just looking absent-mindedly, he's taking in information. He's always been this smart, but his head wasn't looking at those options. But now he is, and we can see the difference. This is so exciting, man. I think Juraj Slafkovsky is going to be a very good player for years to come. And we're seeing glimpses of it so far, and I really hope they keep this line together. But that wraps things up for today's show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates on the 24/7 news channel to just keep up to date on what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our episodes next week as we delve a lot more into this World Juniors tournament coming up. A lot more rosters are going to be coming up. Some cuts are going to be made. So make sure to tune in for that next week. This has been Hadi Kalakash with Sebastian Hi, and we hope you tune in next time.